For years, the World Economic Forum meet here in Davos, Switzerland, has been thought to be a collection of some of the wealthiest, richest individuals anywhere in the world. Essentially, a talk shop for those who are wealthy, while there is an entire planet of those who do not have the same resources. Is that necessarily correct? Is there no space for the rich to speak? But is there a balance which can also be found? That's something that we in NDTV have been working hard to figure out for years and years of coming over here. We've got a wonderful guest with us, Amitabh Behar with us. He's the Executive Director of Oxfam. And Oxfam's presence and Amitabh's presence over here at the World Economic Forum is interesting because every year, without fail, Oxfam comes out with the World Inequality Report. It's called Inequality Inc. this time around, where they talk about how the rich are getting richer while the poor are, in many cases, remaining poor or even getting more poor. The statistics are striking. Thanks very much, Amitabh, for being with us. Now, in your report, you say that the wealth of the world's 5 richest has doubled since 2020 and 5 billion have become poorer in the same period. Can you explain the corollary?
So, this itself is startling. When you're looking at 5 richest becoming, adding the same amount to their wealth, they're doubling their wealth. On the other hand, you have 5 billion people becoming poorer. But let me start with a prediction. Sure. Oxfam is willing to make a prediction.
Trillionaire, right?
Though sadly, that we will have a trillionaire within a decade, whereas we need 230 years to end poverty. So that's what we are looking at. This obscene inequality. You know, it's really heart-wrenching that you have this. In the last 3 years, since 2020, we are calling it now the decade of division.
Right.
The billionaires have added 3 trillion. And on the other hand, there are 800 million plus people who are sleeping hungry.
But Amitabh, let me ask you this. The billionaires that you speak about also employ millions of people around the world. So in as much as there is inequality in currency terms, dollar terms, euro terms, there is employment generation as well.
Sure, but that's precisely why we talk of the inequality. As in, if you have billionaires adding wealth, whereas 800 million people, again, I was talking of people who are sleeping hungry, but 800 million people are not being able to keep their wages in line with the inflation. So they're actually becoming poorer. The question is, again, another very critical statistics that we have, that of the top 10 corporations, you have 80% of all the profits going only to their shareholders.
Right.
Yes, so that's, in these times where you have a cost of living crisis, where you have inflation, why do you need 80% of the profits going to the shareholders? Why can't you really do what we're saying?
And in many cases, the shareholders can't even use money of that magnitude.
They can't. They probably don't know that they're getting more money.
You've suggested a wealth tax.
Yes,
as one solution.
Yeah.
Many solutions.
Yeah.
What would that do?
So wealth taxes, it's very clear. If you look at all data across, and on this, there's reasonable amount of agreement that if you invest resources in public services like education, health, drinking water, public transport, it leads to a more equal society. And that's what we need resources for. And wealth tax has been around for a while. And that's something that the government must essentially do. And let me just, because you're talking of taxes, last year, and these are startling figures, $1 trillion were taken away to tax havens of foreign profits.
Right.
Just imagine what this could have done. This would have really meant, every dollar is about one lesser school teacher or one lesser nurse in a hospital.
I found one interesting statistic. In your report, you write, it would take 1,200 years for a woman working in the health and social sector to earn what the average CEO in the biggest 100 Fortune companies earns in a year. And that's such a tragedy because, there's nothing more than health and the social sector. And there is such disparity in salaries.
If this is really a trade-off between teachers, nurses, health workers on the one hand, and billions more to the super rich already, I think it should be a given. So what we really need is taking back power to rein in the corporates and ensure that everybody gets a living wage.
So your agenda or your belief is social equality and not necessarily one which comes through a free market economy.
So this is not really a free market economy. You're looking at monopolies. 40% of the seed market is controlled by two companies. 25 years ago, you had 60 large pharma companies. That's come down to 10. So they're pretty much deciding, as in we know what monopolies in seed could do. What we eat, if that's also decided by corporates, there's a problem. Taxes in the 80s in OECD countries, we have now half those taxes,
Right.
the corporate taxes.
Right.
So even within this framework of the liberal framework that we are talking of, I think there have been enormous distortions, and it's really about addressing those distortions. Even an IMF and the World Bank are saying that these monopolies are bad for economy, bad for politics, bad for policy. So that has to change.
A final question. Global poverty remains at pre-pandemic level. We still have not gone beyond the pandemic as yet, while global wealth has supercharged. That's disappointing that the path to recovery, to meaningful income for billions around the world has not happened even a couple of years after the worst of the pandemic.
Yes, it is disappointing. And that's the question we must ask. What is its role? Is it just a talk shop, as you said? Or is it here for some substantive action? That's really a historic choice that people who come here at FIF need to make.
And how do they look at you? And what do you speak about when they openly endorse, in many cases, well, not just that, they do a lot more, but there are people over here who openly endorse wealth and wealth creation. And you're looking at the prism of development from an entirely different standpoint.
So I hope they see us as critical friends who are asking tough questions, but the right questions. But let me also say, we work with the patriotic millionaires. Globally, a whole range of millionaires are saying, please tax us more.
Right.
You have the Mondragon in Spain, a cooperative. Because of their work there, that province in Spain has lower inequality than even Finland. You have this large government, it's called, I forget the name, but they have transferred all their shares to a trust, saying that our stakeholder is Mother Earth.
Right.
So I would say that there are enough people who understand at this juncture these levels of obscene inequalities cannot continue.
Right.
It's going to disrupt societies. It's going to disrupt quality, and that's what we are seeing across the world. So that needs to fundamentally change, even for the stability of the markets and countries. We cannot continue with this obscene inequality.
Amitabh Behar, thanks very much for sharing that data with us. So Amitabh Behar talking about the fundamental disparity which exists between the rich and the poor, the fact that COVID may be over, at least in what was a reality a couple of years back, but pre-COVID levels of poverty continue, and the disparity only shows signs of increasing.